Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Four Train Express. I'm your boy, the Four Train Express. Today, we've got a very special guest with us. It is former Major Leaguer Greg Golson. Shout out to everybody in the chat. If you are on X and want to come join us, please do so. Switch over to YouTube. Please subscribe, share this out with everyone you know, like the stream, and come join the conversation. It'll be a good one. And anyone in the chat who is here, if you have questions, please drop them into the comment sections, and we will get to as many of them as we can. But let's give a quick shout out to the chat. We've got Stephen B. What's going on? Ken, thanks for stopping by. We got our guy Nithin Ramachandra, who set this up. Him and his team do outstanding work over there. Please show him some love. We also got Dennis. We got NFE, my guy. Salute to all of you. And our guest of honor, Greg Golson. How are you, Greg?
Good. How you doing?
Good. So, guys, load up the chat with questions. It should be a fun time. So let's kick things off. So you played for three different teams: Philly, the Texas Rangers, and the Yankees. What was your time like with the Yankees? And what was it was it more, not more special, but more of an enjoyment than it was with Philly or Texas?
I mean, that's a really good question. And I had a little bit of nostalgia yesterday because a friend of mine sent me a video of like top throws from the 2010 to 2020, and I was on there from 2010. And you know, when you're with a team, you obviously have loyalty to that team, and you're like,
yeah,
I think they're the best because they're clothing you in a uniform. But when you leave, you might be a little salty and start looking back at the things that you might have wanted to change. So, you know, when I saw the video of the throw where I threw Crawford out, I realized, like, man, that was actually pretty fun, you know, like playing for the Yankees and, you know, being in the clubhouse and getting those experiences. And, you know, when I was with the Yankees, it was absolutely like I was on top of the world, you know, because if you look at the rosters that I was playing on, like it's such an accomplishment in my eyes to be on those rosters. Derek Jeter was my favorite player. So, you know,
that's pretty cool
to play with him, for him to like call me a teammate and stuff like that. That was awesome. I guess where I wouldn't say regret, but where, you know, I look back and I see a little disappointment. I just wish I would have had more opportunities, which is kind of hard when you've got a Hall of Fame lineup like they did.
Yeah.
But, you know, playing for the Phillies, Rangers, and Yankees from 2008 to 2011, the timing just wasn't good for me. I mean, all of them were in the World Series or in the playoffs, so there weren't very many at-bats for a guy trying to, you know, break into the league.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as, like, the difference in almost like a caste system with the Yankees, they're just, you know, even in the minor leagues, you can just kind of tell that you're where you need to be as far as like resources available, you know, coaching, the talent that they bring in. You know, it's very, you know, there's a few ball clubs that they just operate well, and having played in the Yankees organization was definitely one of the premier organizations to play in. Obviously I didn't play with the Dodgers, but you know, the Dodgers are that on the West Coast as well. So it's very similar, you know, it's just the upper echelon teams that have the resources and the money to do that. You can really tell as a player.
So you mentioned Jeter, which Hall of Famer without question, got in 99% of the vote. Honestly, should have been 100, but
Agreed.
You know, to each his own, and whatever that was. But anyways, I digress. You mentioned Jeter. What was it like playing behind a guy like CC and Mariano?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously an immense amount of pressure. You don't want to like drop the ball when Mariano's on the mound, or, you know, with CC dealing like he always did. Seemed like he always found a way to deal. Like, you don't want to be the guy that messes it up or throws him off his game because you didn't make a play that you were supposed to make. But, you know, honestly, when you're in the moment, you've played so many games and, you know, you feel like you're so ready for the moment that you don't really think about it. It just kind of happens. And then you have the opportunity afterwards to kind of think about it, you know, but I remember there was one game in Baltimore where CC threw I think it was a 2-hit shutout, complete game, right? And I was in the field, and I catch the last out of the game, and not thinking, but obviously didn't really think it was that important anyway. I just tossed the last out into the stands.
Okay.
It's a 2-hitter. It's not a perfect game. It's not a no-hitter. It's not a 1-hitter. It's a 2-hitter, and a couple guys got hits or got walks. So I just tossed the ball in the stands, and as I'm like high-fiving everybody after the game, Posada's like, "You threw that ball in the stands?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Bad idea." So I'm like, CC. I'm thinking CC's gonna like just go off on me, and I was like, "My bad, man. I didn't mean to throw it in the stands." He was like, "Throw what in the stands?" And I was like, "Oh, I was saying that I shouldn't have thrown it." He's like, "Man, whatever." He was like, "It's not a no-hitter." He was like, "Do whatever." So that kind of let me realize, like, all right, there's pressure, but at the same time, like these are dudes, just normal dudes that are just good at what they do.
Yeah. What was CC like as a teammate? I know from all the games I've watched him pitch in the Yankees uniform, he always stood up for his teammates, was always that guy that looked like he was almost like that mentor father figure to the team. For you as a player as his teammate, what was that like having him in the dugout with you on the road, at home, everywhere? What was that like knowing that he was a teammate of yours?
I mean, clearly he played so long. He just the conversation, like a lot of times when I would get my work in during BP, and then I would just kind of be shagging, he would kind of come and stand by, and we just talk about whatever. We talked about his time in Cleveland, Milwaukee. We talked about it all. But like I remember for I think it was my 25th birthday. Yeah, 25th or 26th birthday. Jeter took me out in Boston for my birthday. And we went to this restaurant, and I mean, there was probably 5 Hall of Famers at the restaurant that night to go out for my birthday, and CC was one of them.
That's really cool.
And I just remember, just the stuff that he was talking about. Like he was very much like a lead by example type of guy. But if you look at his, what was it? I think it was his last start where he had a bunch of qualifiers in his contract that if he met, that he would get extra money, and ended up drilling a guy for his teammate, and that caused him to miss the qualifier. But because he's such a good teammate, the Yankees took care of him anyway. Like, to me, that's the best way to encompass who he was as a teammate. He's just like, you could tell, pitching every day, it seemed like he knew that he needed to do more on the days that he wasn't pitching, and you could tell it definitely made a difference.
Yeah, that's actually a really cool story that, Jeter took you out for your birthday, and then you had, 5 Hall of Famers there. That's a pretty cool experience.
Yeah,
but I want to get to a couple questions from the chat. This is from our friend Stephen B. He says, Mr. Golson, what team did you enjoy playing for the most? Favorite teammates, each team you played for?
I would say I enjoyed playing for the Lancaster Barnstormers the most. And that was an independent ball team. And just because, one, I was like a big part of that team. Like I feel like you enjoy playing for teams that you have an impact on. And while I did contribute with the Yankees, the Phillies, and the Rangers, it wasn't on a nightly basis where it's like I knew I was dependent on to help win games. And in indie ball, that first year I played in indie ball was the first year that like winning was paramount. Winning mattered, because in the minor leagues, winning doesn't matter. It's all about development. So, spending majority of my career in the minor leagues and getting time in the big leagues, where all of a sudden winning is so important. And there's pressure on you, but you're not really contributing. It's just kind of that weird space to be in. So when I was with Lancaster, or when I was with Cancun, or when I was playing outside of the states or outside of affiliated baseball, it just seemed like I like fell in love with the game again, because instead of worrying about like the process of if my hands are doing this or that, trying to develop, it was how can I win this situation right now? And ultimately, I think that made me a better player. And there were a lot of things that I wish I knew when I played, but I didn't really find out until I got to indie ball when the situation changed.
Yeah, that's a great point. We have one from our friend Ken here. Mr. Golson, you were traded to the Yankees the year after the last World Series that they won. What were the expectations for the 2010 Yankees next dynasty beginning?
I mean, I think with teams like the Yankees, they're always in a position. They're always in the playoffs. So I think, like you can look when they don't win the World Series, they don't get rings, which is like a lot of teams don't do that. Like a lot of teams, they'll win the National League or they'll win the American League, and they make sure that they get a ring if they don't win the World Series because that's an accomplishment to get that far. But
Yeah,
for the Yankees aren't getting a ring for winning the division. They expect to. So I don't think there was any difference in, what they expected going into the year. I know that lineup and that roster was superstar studded. I think I got brought in to be a defensive replacement for Swisher because he was kind of slower on the defensive side. But like as far as I think every year the goal for the Yankees is to win the World Series, and it's not really that out of the question for them to be that way.
So you bring up Nick Swisher. He always looked like he was having fun, always clowning around, being that guy in the dugout to keep everything loose. Is that something that you could say about Nick Swisher in that dugout?
I mean, I don't think it was something that it was on his mind to be loose and keep everybody. I think that's just who he was, or who he is. Like even now, he was. I think he did he was the color commentator for that new league in Saudi Arabia. I was listening to a game and heard him. I was like, oh, this is Swisher, and it like playing with him, being around him. He offered for me to live with him when I was up, which was really cool. Swisher's a good dude. Awesome. Playing with him, like you can see after playing with him and talking to him that being a color commentator was like almost always in his like vision. Like the way he like breaks into conversations, the way he talks to people, the stories he tells, it's like he is a color commentator already. So I think he's just like a jovial guy, like he speaks like he's super passionate and just wants to like, I don't know, not be the life of the party, but he just kind of is.
Yeah. that sounds like he was fun to be around as well. So very interesting. We also have another question from Ken. Greg, I understand that you are a current Major League scout. How much do you utilize analytics, vice, and eyeball test of a prospect's talent?
It's a good question. I mean, I think a lot of the metrics and the analytics that I use is, how do I say it? Like when I played, obviously there were certain things that I used or keyed on to give me an edge. Like maybe a pitcher, maybe he, moves his shoulder first before he goes to the plate. So I would key on that. And I use a lot of that information and those little gems that I would have as ways to help me identify talent on the player side. But I'd say my first year as a scout, I was trying to use the eyeball test just primarily because I didn't really pay attention to the metrics and the analytical stuff just because for so long I didn't really need to. I would just look at the player and then formulate a game plan on how I could beat that player, whether it be, a catcher, a pitcher, whatever it is. But I think a lot of the decision makers in baseball didn't play. So their language that they speak in about players is metrics, statistics, and analytics based. So in order to kind of communicate to my superiors, I have to be able to understand that stuff. So I use that. The best way to put it would be like, my job is to utilize the skills that I learned as a player and quantify them with metrics or analytics, so maybe something every at bat. I knew that if a guy had a good cutter and a good changeup, I knew as a hitter, hey, he's got a really good chance of like he's got two pitches that complement each other well. If he's got another one, he's going to have a good game. So,
Yeah.
I think analytics and the metrics aren't very good at judging what a good changeup is, because it's all about deception based off of the previous pitch. So situations like that, I think a lot of the decision makers in the tools that we have is where we're trying to find a little bit more direction so that we can have a model that says, okay, this guy is justifiably good and this guy isn't. But until then, you kind of need as many voices as possible to chime in. So that could be the eye test of a veteran scout that just knows the game, or it could be a guy who never played at all, but he's got the history in the Rolodex in his mind to say, this guy reminds me of this guy. It's really just like the wealth of the group, I think, when it comes to stuff like that.
That's a very interesting point, because my question for you would be, with all the analytics that are now going on in the game with spin rate, exit velo, launch angle, all that, how do you feel about how analytics is going now than it was in previous years, where in previous years we didn't see analytics as much? Yeah. We still saw it, but nowadays what we see is more analytics than actual strategy. What is your take on that?
In my free time, I give like private lessons to some amateurs, just because like it kind of keeps me fresh as far as like a scout as well. It kind of keeps the game. It keeps the game being difficult, and I think a lot of people who don't play, they get disconnected from the game, and then the game looks easy. But I think what the issue is now is the analytics and metrics and all this stuff. It's so prevalent that the players are thinking about it while they're playing. And I think that's where you get into a problem, because a lot of the metrics and the analytics, it's to analyze. It's analytics, like, so to be thinking about launch angle, exit velo, all these different things while playing, it just clouds the mind. And you've already got a lot of stuff going on,
Yeah.
So if you don't have a clear mind, or you're chasing exit velo and all this stuff, it's kind of just like it's I'll put it this way. A lot of the gurus and the hitting coaches and pitching coaches and all the people who make their living off of making players better, they need something to quantify the incremental progress that their players are making from the first lesson to the last lesson or whatever. And I think that monetization and that like dependence on amateurs and players is what has made the analytics and the metrics so prevalent, because it's the language that people speak when they're trying to better themselves. But I honestly think that we are moving too much towards the cookie cutter, this is how you do it type of thing. Like if you look at swings and pitches in the 70s and 80s, there was so much variance, like a guy like I'll just bring up Tony Gwynn. Like a guy like Tony Gwynn, if he goes to a tryout nowadays, does he get the same respect that he would back in the day? Or Ozzie Smith or anybody who was a great, they're not putting up the metrics that everyone sees as so valuable now. So like even now they released the what was it, bat speed stuff, and a lot of the better hitters have lower bat speed.
Yeah, no doubt. Just before we continue, a couple more people showed up. D. Rahad, it's nice to see you, bud. I haven't seen you in a good minute, but nice to see you. Thank you for joining us. We had another question here. Let me just grab it and pull it up for you. Where are we here? It's actually from Stephen B. And the question is, Mr. Golson, was there a lot of meeting before games and after games before the media? Are there player-only meetings that the media don't know about?
For the most part, whenever there's a team meeting, it's not a good thing. Like team meetings come when the team is just not playing well, or they're not hustling, or something needs to be addressed so that everyone gets it out. But I'd say for the most part, the team meetings were, if you're having a team meeting, just know that heads are about to roll pretty soon because they're going to make some changes. So the teams that I was on, there weren't very many team meetings, but I think in other teams, if you are having a lot of team meetings, you're probably not a playoff team.
Yeah, that's fair. I do ask this quite frequently with people that I have interviewed, and it is about the draft.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like for you as a player going into the draft and going through that process? Can you walk us through from your experience on what that was like and going through that process?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a blur, it's kind of like I liken it to like a wedding day, where it's like it's going to happen on a certain day for so long, and then when it happens, it's like boom, boom, gone, and now the next step is here. For me, I was so focused on signing a letter of intent to go to college. That was my number one, and once that happened, my whole focus was just going to school. I signed to play at University of Texas. I grew up in Austin, so that was like a done deal. I knew that was going to happen. But I think, signing with Texas, they're one of those schools where it doesn't really hurt your draft status if you sign with Texas, because they lose so many guys to the draft every year. Whereas if I had signed with, like, let's say Stanford or Rice or Princeton or something, they would have seen that as, hey, he wants to go to school. Let's not draft him. So I wanted to go to school, but I got drafted so high that I really couldn't turn it down, So, the whole process was super fun and fast, and like, you feel like everyone wants a piece of you. And then you get drafted and you take off, and it's, you get all this money and everyone knows your name, and you feel like your prospect status will last forever, but it doesn't, I just think the whole draft process it's like if I could do it over again, I would have enjoyed it a little bit more, but you're so focused on setting a good impression, not especially now with like social media and stuff. Guys got to worry about everything. Back in 2004 when I got drafted, there wasn't social media. There wasn't very much viral stuff that could ruin careers. So, it was just basically just making sure you shook people's hands with a firm handshake, look people in the eye, and the normal stuff that you're told when you're trying to make an impression for a new job. You just don't realize that there's millions of dollars on the line.
Yeah. So our good friend D-Rod, who is one of our favorites here, is saying, Greg, what needs to happen for teams and or players to change the max effort mentality that is causing the rash of injuries?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I don't really know the answer because, I had a conversation with a good buddy of mine a couple of days ago, and we were talking about this exact subject. And we can't, as organizations, as teams, as colleges, as coaches, we can't prioritize velocity and home runs, but then be mad when those things result in inconsistency. Like those are the harder, like throwing hard and hitting the ball hard. Those are two qualities about success that usually are like, they go hand in hand with success. Like if a guy throws 80 and a guy throws 100, it's clearly going to be harder to hit the 100 than it is the 80.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with that information, you kind of have to like I know, or put it this way. If everyone in the major leagues is throwing 95 to 105, that's not hard anymore. Like every hitter is used to it. So I think eventually it will move back, because I remember when I played, it was all about sinker slider. You wanted to make X's on the plate, so the pitchers were going like this. Well, to combat that, all the hitting people decided, all right, let's work on launch angle so our barrel will get in the zone earlier and we'll try to lift. Well, you can only do that on pitches that are down. So when, sinker sliders stopped being as effective, guys started throwing four-seam fastballs that rise, and curveballs because they're making X's on the plate that go this way instead of this way. So now this is the way that things are happening, and guys can't control it as much. So the hitters are swinging as hard as they can because guys aren't able to pinpoint and locate and exploit swing deficiencies, I guess. So I think it's not something that we can kind of control. I think it's just something where the game ebbs and flows, and eventually sinker ballers will be extremely valuable. Like even now, like Paul Skeens throws that 99-mile-an-hour splinker or whatever. Like that pitches that are difficult will be created, and the hitters will have to adjust. So I think that's basically what's going to happen is the style of play that. Sorry, I had to let my dog in. The style of play that is causing the injuries will eventually be phased out because it won't be effective.
Interesting. Ken has another question for you, and that is, Greg, are prospects being brought up too early? Jason Dominguez injured after 8 games in the major leagues. James Outman sent down to AAA. Corbin Carroll having a horrible sophomore season.
I definitely do think the time, like players are getting promoted much earlier than they were before. But again, I think that has a lot to do with service time and money, and like there's a lot of factors that go into why players get called up other than their actual playing style and ability. But with Dominguez, Outman, and who was the other one, Corbin Carroll, I think what's happening is the media is too quick to crown the next best thing. Where if you look at a lot of the better hitters in the game, a lot of them weren't projected that from the jump. Like no one thought that Luis Arias would be doing what he's doing. A lot of the better hitters in the game, they turn into better hitters as they get comfortable in the league and as they face quality pitching. It's difficult for a rookie or a guy in the minor league who's killing it in the minor leagues, and then he gets called up and he's treated like a rookie. Like you kind of have to, for instance, Corbin Carroll tore it up last year, like doing everything that they asked of him. But, he was a rookie. No one knew who he was. And I think going into this year, everyone realized, okay, this guy's legit. We need to plan for him. And I think that's what the issue of a lot of these guys who break onto the scene and they're so hot is it is the hardest jump to go from the minor leagues to the big leagues. The hardest jump. So not only is it the hardest, but like the way Pete Crow Armstrong with the Cubs he got called up last year, and he was struggling in the major leagues because they were pitching him differently than he was getting pitched in the minor leagues. In the minor leagues, he was feared. So the pitchers, they didn't throw him fastballs. They threw him a lot of off speed. They stayed out of the zone. So a lot of times he had really good counts. Well, when he gets to the big leagues, he's hitting 9 or 8 hole. Pitchers aren't afraid of him. He doesn't have any stats. No one knows anything. So they're challenging him. And he's used to being able to just kind of sit back and get a good count so that he can be aggressive. So now as a rookie, he's treated kind of like a scrub, and it's completely different style. So I think what happens is a lot of times it's just an adjustment that guys aren't used to. With Outman, he wasn't playing every day this year, and I think he needed some consistent at-bats. And, you look at him now in AAA, and he's killing it. I just think we're too quick to crown these young players before, and it's a disservice to them because they're good. Just because they struggle doesn't mean they're not. They're still going to have successful careers. It's just we've got to give it time,
Absolutely. And then we have another question from Stephen B here, which is, Mr. Golson, do you think the analytics with RPMs, high velo, exit velo, off the bat, launch angle, and bat swings are sustainable? And we go back to where it's not as important like the 90s and 2000s. So I guess what he's asking is, do you think that with all of these analytics, they are sustainable, or do you think we should go back to how it was in the 90s and 2000s?
I don't think there's no putting, what's the saying? Like there's no putting the confetti back in the thing. Like
Something like
It's
that.
out. Yeah, it's out. So I think I think ultimately what baseball is a slow grinding progression into incorporating everything.
Yeah.
So I don't think we'll get rid of analytics. I think we will better use them. I don't think like a lot of people think analytics is a fruitless task because it doesn't, anything that can't be quantified isn't considered. So luck, clutch, anything like that, it's difficult for analytics to kind of consider.
Mhm.
So I think it's I don't know. I think we're 20 to 30 years, like we're a long way away from having like tangible analytics that we can say this will produce a winning team. I think we're so far away that we're going to have a lot of lumps and we might give up on the process, which I don't think is going to happen. But I think right now we're drowning in information. We've got so
Yeah.
much information that it's like a Cheesecake Factory menu. Like you don't know what to do, it's difficult to decide what to do. And I think a lot of hitters are struggling because of it. Pitchers are too. Like everyone says the game is so much better, but we're creating rules so that it's more exciting. Batting averages are down, ERAs are down. Everything that will quantifiably tell you if something's better or not is worse. But the velos are
Yeah.
better, and the velos are better. So I don't know. I think eventually everything will kind of get back to its equilibrium. But for now, it's the craze. Everyone loves it.
Yeah. So you played in both the American and National League. What was your favorite park to play in the National League? What was your favorite park to play in the American League? And which park in the National American and American Leagues did you like the least?
It's funny because for the American League, for both questions, it's the same ballpark.
Really?
Yeah, I loved playing at Fenway, but I hated Fenway.
Huh. Interesting.
It's so old. Like just being there, you realize how man, this is crazy. But playing right field there, it's like playing center field because like I'm standing at regular depth at my position, and I look to my left at the right field pole, and the right field pole is directly to my left, and it's maybe 30 feet away, which just makes me feel awkward. But then I look back, and the fence is it's like a whole football field behind me.
Yeah.
Like the clubhouse is small, like getting to and from the stadium because Boston isn't made for buses and like it's just a lot of things that it's kind of a pain in Boston, but at the same time you realize, man, they've been doing it like this since this place was built. So I'd say the AL is Boston. NL, I played at Turner Field for my basically my debut, and that I think the new ballpark is way better. Obviously, Truist Field. I don't know. I can't really think about it. I mean, for the National League, I was only up with the Phillies for a month, so I didn't really get that much time with them. And the places we went was all NL East teams, and again, like there really wasn't much. So I'd say the best in the National League was probably the Citizens Bank. But it's so small. It's so small. It's hard to get there. And then the worst in the National League would probably be old Pro Player with the Marlins. Is that what it was called? Pro Player?
Something like that.
It was just so hot, and like the visiting dugout was in the sun. Like there was just a ton of stuff that you can tell it wasn't made for a baseball, a baseball ballpark. Same with Coliseum, which shouldn't really bring up since that's like a touchy subject, but baseball was not supposed to be played there either.
Interesting. So I've got another question from Ken, and it is, Greg, for years the Dodgers destroyed the NL West for the division championship, followed early playoff eliminations. Do you feel that the 1.3 billion that was added this winter will change this?
I hope so. Otherwise, it's 1.3 wasted. Um, I think the problem with the Dodgers, and I don't think a lot of people acknowledge it because it's fun to hate the Dodgers, is with the decade plus of winning the division, we're really not playing meaningful baseball in September ever. Like we've already got a 7-game lead right now. And I'm not that's knock on wood. That's not saying that we're going to win it again this year, but I think if you look at Arizona got hot last year in the second half, and they were hot at the right time, and that's who beat us. Like to have 5 days off before the playoffs start, you can't play anyone. You're playing your your AAA guys against your big league guys. Like there's no way to simulate game play. So then we've got two games in LA, and then we got to go to San Diego or to Arizona. And both of those those fan bases are like, it means a lot to them, like going into Arizona or San Diego after losing one at home. It's like impossible in those playoff settings to have any type of momentum when you've got Arizona or San Diego that literally hates the Dodgers. Like they hate us so much. So, there's a lot of factors that go into it. Is that an excuse? No, I don't think so. Like if you're getting paid that much, you should be able to handle the pressure and the layoff. But I do think there's more factors into it than, man, they've got a great team, they should win, because I think the layoff last year hurt everyone that had it. Everyone. Like all of the 101 teams are basically out of it.
Mm-hmm. Very fair point. It's definitely about getting hot at the right time, like you said. Is there a team that you would have loved to have played for in your career?
Anyone that would have given me more ABs, honestly. So I can't really say who exactly. I mean, when I was on the Phillies, Rangers, and Yankees, like I would look at other teams and see, like, man, I wish I could get an opportunity to, be there, or, maybe a team that was like right now. If you look at, let's say the White Sox, they've got the worst record in baseball. If there's a guy in AAA who's having a good year, like why not give that guy an opportunity? And that's basically what they're doing. Like they're rebuilding for the future. So kind of like Altuve in Houston those years, like he was the best player by far on that team, and they were a last place team. Like I feel like if I would have been on a team that wasn't a playoff contender during those years that I was trying to break in, I would have gotten more ABs that weren't so. Like I remember one game when I was with the Yankees, they started a lefty, and Swisher was a right-handed bat that couldn't. I think he hurt his shoulder, so he couldn't swing right-handed. So I got the start.
Okay.
After 2 ABs, I was 2 for 2, and going into the 5th inning, they brought in a right-handed pitcher, or they had a right-handed pitcher warming up in the bullpen who was on the mound. I was going to lead off that inning. I'm about to walk up to the plate, and I get called on by Girardi, and he calls me back to the dugout because they're going to pinch hit Swisher for me because there's a righty on the mound and I'm a right-handed hitter. And it's like, man, I'm 2 for 2. Like we're down 3 runs, and this is the leadoff at bat. Like Swisher's not going to hit a 3-run bomb. It just like that was a perfect scenario where it was like it didn't matter what I did. I think looking back at it, they had me, especially as a scout. I kind of know this now. They had me slotted into a role, and there was nothing I could do to prove them differently. Whereas I think like with Cleveland, Stephen Kwan, he was a contact hitter, and now all of a sudden he's hitting home runs, and they're like, man, this is who you are. I don't think that could have happened for me. I feel like it was just they knew who I was, defensive replacement, only could hit against lefties. and that's who we are. And I think if I had played with a team that wasn't so win now mode, I probably would have gotten more opportunities.
Very fair. So with everything that's going on in the majors, what do you think stands out the most to you between the gambling scandals to, you don't even have to touch on the gambling scandal, just like with that, or even now with Edwin Diaz getting suspended for 10 games for having a sticky substance on his sand, gets thrown out before he even throws a pitch. To whatever else that is going on, what do you think stands out the most, and what do you think is hurting the game the most?
What stands out the most is I don't think the game is any different than it's ever been, as far as the people playing. Like, no matter what rules they put in place, guys are going to bend them. Guys are going to cheat. It's just like there's really not much to lose when it comes to stuff like that. You know, like when Edwin Diaz comes back, is he going to have less pay? No. Are the fans going to look at him differently? No. Like, I think it's just kind of, as I said, like I think baseball in general is the same. It's just there's more exposure. Like, there's more awareness of what's happening. You've got umpires that are checking fingers, you know, like there's a lot of things that you can do that like will give you an advantage, you know. Like, I remember there were catchers that I knew that they would put the stuff on the ball. So it had nothing to do with the pitcher. They would check the pitcher, his hands and everything. And then once the umpire gives the ball to the catcher, he would put some stuff. He would have some sticky stuff on his shin guard, and he would put it on the ball, and then throw it to the pitcher, and you have no idea that anything's going on. So I just think there's like so many ways you can get around this. It's just the appearance of being above board. That's how baseball's always been. Like, if I'm at first base and the catcher's giving signs and his legs are wide open and I can see it, I'm going to cheat. Like, that's just the nature of the game. But I think as far as what was your question? You said what stands out and what is
making the game worse? Like, what is having a negative effect on the game?
I'd say a lot of the and this is going to sound like an attack on someone I know, but I think what's hurting the game is people that don't know hitting or pitching teaching amateurs hitting and pitching.
Interesting.
And I say that because, like, I'm not saying that they're bad people. I'm not saying, hey, these people are terrible people and they shouldn't be doing it. But like, they're clearly trying to help. But I see it as a pro scout, and I know this isn't going to work. Like, this, you need to change this, or you're likely not going to have success at the next level. And that's not even at the pro level. Like, high schoolers that are learning something, I can tell them. I typically don't, but I can tell that what they're doing isn't going to work. But if they want to work on what they're working on, go ahead. Maybe they can prove me wrong. But there's certain things that are being taught now that are just blatantly wrong.
Yeah. So we have another question from Ken here. And it's Greg, as I understand it, you were a fast runner. Did you run a race against Granderson?
Never Granderson, but he wasn't really considered like extremely fast. I raced against Michael Bourne, and we split the races. The Phillies were big on having fast guys, so we always were racing. But I remember there was one draft we had maybe 4 or 5 guys that were as faster than me, and that Instructs was when I raced Bourne. It was probably 7 guys that all ran sub 6'4" 60s, which is like moving. That's moving.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah,
it's quite impressive. So we have a couple questions here. First one is from Ken again, and it is, Greg, what do you think of the potential of Otani becoming the first DH to win an MVP?
I love it. It sounds like we would be very successful if that happens. He's definitely on pace for it. Like the stuff he does is crazy. I didn't think it would be possible for him to win an MVP without pitching, but what he's doing right now, like to lead off the past 2 games with homers, that's when I was like, all right, this guy might be pretty good.
So we have another question from Yankees too. Greg, what was your most memorable moment as a player when you played?
Probably, yeah, definitely the when I threw Crawford out to end the game in Tampa. Kind of, I'd been put in as a defensive replacement for Swisher, and the turf really helped because I knew that I could just keep the throw low. So when the ball went up, Tampa Bay's roof is the color of a baseball, so that was why I didn't get behind it, because I was just making sure I could kind of see it. And then ball came down and he started running. I was like, all right, just keep it low. And it ended up sailing on me and ended up making a pretty good throw. But that was definitely the most memorable moment, just because like I got back to the clubhouse and there was reporters all at my locker. I had 100 missed calls. I had 200 missed text messages. It was just kind of like, what just happened?
That I remember that play. That was quite the throw too. I mean,
loved it.
That was a really nice throw, but that's actually pretty cool that you get back in the clubhouse and your phone's blown up
just
and
going crazy. And it just happened to be like the day that a lot of people back home were watching the game. Like,
oh wow.
And it was like it was probably 2 days, but I think it was 2 or 3 days before my birthday. Like, there were so many things that like I was just vibrating very high at that moment.
Yeah. What was it like making your major league debut? What was that experience like, being able, you get called up to the bigs, Phillies, bring you in or bring you up and give you that call and you get to the big leagues? What was that like making your debut, and how did you find out you were getting called up to the majors?
It was funny because like I had been having some hamstring issues the previous 2 weeks. This was in 2008. And, it's so close to September that I didn't want anyone to know that my hamstring was tight. So I would go into the training room and just kind of ask vague questions about how I can get my hamstring ready. And the trainer knew, but as long as I didn't really get on the training table, there's really nothing to report. So I would just kind of take care of it myself and was kind of get myself ready for the games. And it was August 28th or 29th, and I had a day off. And I'm like, why do I have the day off? I'm used to playing every day. I'm like, why do I have the day off? And they're like, just to give you a break. I was like, okay. Because I know that if they give me the day off on August, the last day of August, that's likely because I'm going to be a September call-up. But this was the 28th or 29th or something. So to me, I was like, this is going to look bad if I need an off day before September. So I'm upset, and I'm upset the entire time in the dugout. I'm thinking that the trainer ratted me out to the manager, like I'm shooting them dirty looks and stuff. That game happens to go into extra innings. So like we burned through all of our bench players until I'm the only one left. Like I'm thinking I got to play, and they will not put me in. We're in like the 16th, 15th inning, and I'm still not playing. And I'm usually hitting like lead off or 2-hole. And like it's a tie ball game, and not a single time did he look at me to go in the game. They're hitting pitchers, like, and I'm just thinking, I'm like, man, this is it. Like, they think that I'm hurt, like I'm done. So after the game, I'm sitting at my locker just pissed. Still didn't play. We ended up losing 2, so that made me even more mad.
Oh,
and
God.
The pitching coach comes to my locker and he's like, Skip wants to see you in his office. And I'm like, damn. I'm thinking like they're mad at me because I was such a turd the whole game. And I go in there, and he's like, we gave you the day off today is for a good reason. And I'm thinking I'm about to get chewed out, like, whatever. And he's like, the reason is because you're going to the big leagues tomorrow. And I was like, and I just kind of, I was stunned. That was the last thing on my mind. I didn't even think that was possible. But the reason they called me up early was so that I had service time before September in case I needed to make the playoff roster. So it went from me being like super pissed off
Makes sense.
to like, oh, I could be on the playoff roster. So I obviously apologized to the trainer because he didn't tell me the whole game, and he knew it was because I was getting called up. But that was how I got called up. And then from there, that was in Altoona, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And we had to make it to Philly by the next day at lunchtime.
Okay.
And then we had to ride a train to Washington, to DC, to play against the Nationals. I think it was a 6:00 game or something like that. So like it was just a whirlwind 2 days from me thinking that I blew my shot because of my hamstring to like traveling 700 miles and then going on a train. And it was just like, obviously it was memorable because you're getting called up and your dreams come true, but it was cool how they kind of played me thinking that I was missing out.
Yeah. So we have a question from Sunil. His question is, hi, Greg. Should Otani notably deserve the opportunity to become the MVP considering the gambling scandal surrounding him? If it were you in Pete Rose's shoes, wouldn't you feel vindicated on favoritism?
Yeah, I don't really know much about the whole gambling situation. I'm in my little bubble here in Denver. I've got my coverage. I rarely get to watch Dodger games because I'm watching the teams that I cover. But as far as like the Pete Rose stuff, like I think Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. Like there's so many things that like that's not to diminish gambling, but I don't know. I just feel like the Hall of Fame should be what's done on the field. I think Barry should be in the Hall of Fame. I think Barry should be on the field. I think there's this stigma that comes with the Hall of Fame that makes you think that these guys are perfect, and you can look at anybody in the Hall of Fame and nobody was perfect. So I don't know, like if we find something out about these guys posthumously, are we going to take them out of the Hall of Fame? Or are we going to take their awards away from them? I just think we should keep baseball in its place, everything off the field, leave that to law enforcement or whatever.
I agree. So Stephen V asks, Mr. Golson, I wonder what your thoughts on the current Yankee team and the slump that has happened the last 4 series.
I don't get to watch the Yankees much, just being on the West Coast, and their games are typically over. I mean, I know Soto and Judge are a big part of their success. And in that ballpark, you've got to have good pitching, and in the playoffs, that ballpark it can change so quick. That's one thing I think about. One thing that I think about the Reds, I think if they move the walls back, they would have better success in the playoffs. It's just hard to play playoff baseball when everyone can get a home run.
Yeah.
But with the Yankees, I just feel like I think 10 to 15 years ago, it was Yankees, Rays, Red Sox, and that was all you had to worry about. But now it's the entire division is really good.
Yeah.
Especially you talk about the Orioles, like they're legit. They're here to stay. The Rays are always good. Blue Jays got more money than anybody, and then the Red Sox are rebuilding. So I just think, when you're the Yankees, you've always got, you've got everyone's best shot coming at you. So yeah. I think it's just, I don't know, like teams get hot, teams get cold. I think having Judge and Soto is just scary, especially in that ballpark, though.
Yeah. So we have another question from Ken, and that is, Greg, Jackie Robinson had a tremendous impact on baseball, and his number has been retired throughout the league. Should Roberto Clemente's number also be retired too?
I mean, I really have no opinion on stuff like that. Honestly, I believe the Pirates, they retired his number, didn't they?
Yes, it did.
You know, I think when you start retiring numbers league wide like that, it kind of diminishes the impact of the previous ones. Like Jackie Robinson's number being retired was supposed to be a like monumental thing that was huge because he broke the color
Mm-hmm.
barrier. You know, I don't think there's anything else that compares to that accomplishment. If you ask me, and obviously I'm biased, but I don't think there's anything that compares to breaking the color barrier at the time that he did. You know,
Yeah.
Clemente did a ton of work. You know, off the field, he was a great ball player. Like, there's no denying his impact. But I think once you start retiring numbers uh, league wide like that, then you're going to have a bunch of different groups that are wanting their guy's number retired as well. So I just think it's just kind of a can of worms that just doesn't really need to be opened.
That's fair. Out of the last 10 years in all of baseball, whether it be, in the minors or the majors, who do you think has made the biggest impact team wise, like to make the bigger strides to try to push for a championship that you've seen?
As far as
Heard?
like a player who's really impactful for their team.
No, not a player, but like a team. Like, what team has taken the right steps forward
Oh.
over the last, decade?
I'd have to say, I'd say the Brewers. The Brewers, I mean, they obviously don't have the budget that a lot of other teams have, but they do a really good job of developing pitching.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in my coverage last year. Actually, they were in my coverage the past 4 years, and this is the first year that I don't have them, so I kind of have a good understanding of their organization. They do a really
Mm-hmm.
good job at developing pitching, and they also do they do a good job of drafting and signing players who are unique and not coaching the uniqueness out of them. Like
Interesting.
like Joey, is it Weimer or Weimer? I always forget his how to say his last name, but yeah, like when I saw him play in A-ball a couple years ago, I thought to myself, I was like, "There's no way they're gonna let him get to the big leagues, like with the actions that he has. Like he plays completely unique. Like if you watch a full game of him, you're like, man, that guy just does everything different. The
Yeah.
same with Sal Frelick or I don't know, like a lot of the guys and prospects that they have, they're just so unique and they move in a way that a traditionalist would look at and say that's not going to work. And they do a good job of letting guys be who they are.
Interesting. Now, I know before we went live, you and I were talking backstage, and you said you do scout high school prospects. What is what are some things that you look for in a high schooler, just overall in general, that would stand out to you?
Well, I don't scout high schoolers. I give like lessons, like very, very spare, like in the off season, I'll give lessons to them. So I'll use my knowledge of like player evaluations to kind of project what would be the best path forward for certain players, for the players that I work with. So like if I see a kid who's got two parents that are, both 5'5",
Mm-hmm.
and the kid is 5'2", and he's, smaller, and he comes into the cage and he's swinging like Aaron Judge, I'm going to say, hey, maybe you should have a different swing. That's what I mean by that, in that my philosophy as a instructor, I guess, would be I look at the player and try to see what would best suit him. So I don't think there's a one swing, one throw, one everything fits all. Someone had mentioned in the chat, no one swing can hit every pitch, and it's so true. It's the same. Like no one swing works for everybody. So I think
Yeah.
if I'm looking for something in a player that'll set them apart, it's probably the ability to like control the bat head, like
Interesting.
having hands and wrists that are functional and not just like a stiff swing.
Very, very interesting. Um, if you had to give a message, because a lot of these kids nowadays are having to get surgeries because they're getting hurt, what would be something that a message that you would deliver to kids nowadays, and what would be something that you would want them to hear so they could learn how to stay healthy?
Um, I might be the wrong guy to ask because I got injured a lot when I played, but I'd say, how do I say this? Like, I think I'll just take pitchers, for example. A lot of pitchers think that they got to throw hard or they're going to get crushed.
Yeah.
But then they actually get to the point where they can throw hard and then they don't throw their fastball because they're afraid to throw their fastball. I think that in itself tells everyone that velocity isn't the end all be all. I'll take a well-located fastball over a fastball middle any day.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there should be qualifiers on what these players see as success. Like let's go to another hitter. Let's say as a hitter, maybe they see success as hitting the ball hard.
Okay.
To me, that's not success. that's like on the road to success, but ultimately hitting the ball hard doesn't get you runs. It doesn't get you hits. Like hits get you runs, hits get you success, but hitting the ball hard, if you just hit the ball hard, the theory is that you will, over time, it'll play out. But I don't think it does. I think what Luis Arias does, that's what plays, where it's like, okay, I want to barrel the ball up and I want to hit it there, or I want to get a hit. Because the goal is to get a hit. The goal is to score runs. So my advice to hitters would be learn how to hit with your skill set. You know, like if what you're doing, if your hands aren't fast enough to get there, then change your swing so that it works for you. You know, if you're a pitcher, learn how to get guys out with your arsenal. You know, like you don't always have to add to your arsenal in order to get guys out. And that's velocity or anything. Like maybe you've got a really good cutter that complements your changeup really well. And I guess that's like not really the best advice to give to someone who doesn't know like a direction to go. But to put it better, I'd say there is no one way to do anything, but there is your individual way that would work. But you just have to find it.
Well, that's good advice. You know, stay true to yourself, and that's good advice. I mean, I see a lot of kids who don't stay true to themselves, and they try to go big or go home, and it's it's a great piece of advice. So,
like I remember, I was talking to. Sorry to cut you off, but you made me think of something. Like working with hitters this past year, I realized that so many hitters, especially amateur hitters, and I haven't really talked about this publicly to anybody, is so many hitters equate quick with good. So
really?
like if I say, oh yeah, you got quick hands, a lot of times they'll think, oh, that's good. It's not good or bad. Like it's a skill that you have that allows you to be more capable. But guys with quick hands tend to hit the ball off the end of the bat a lot because they're quicker than their eyes think. So I don't know. Like I think, like I remember playing with a guy. His name was Tyler Kuhn. He's a coach now, I think, at West Virginia.
Okay.
And I remember he was a perennial. This is with the White Sox. He was a perennial 300 hitter, shorter guy, but his bat speed and hands weren't very fast. But every year he hit 330, 340. And I remember asking, I was like, man, how do you do it? Like, I didn't say, man, your hands are slow. How are you doing it? But I was like, how do you do it, man? And he brought it up. He was like, man,
Really?
he was like, honestly, he goes, your hands are so much faster than mine. He goes, but like, you don't have to be quick to hit. And that was the first time that I realized, like, yeah, I guess you're right. Like, guys with slow hands, they just got to be able to judge and have good pitch recognition. But if you know the pace at which you need to swing to make contact, you're better off than the guy who's just quick and just tries to be quick to everything. So the advice that I would give to add to what I said is for pitchers and hitters, like, don't see quick as good. Like, don't be quick, be you.
That's great advice. My final question for you would be, if you got a call, let's say it was from the Dodgers, Red Sox, Reds, whoever it might be, and they said, we want to offer you a coaching job, would you do it?
I don't know. I mean, I applied to be a coach for this job, and I didn't speak fluent enough Spanish to kind of have that. So they suggested I take this, and it ended up working out well. I really like this job. I think I've grown as a baseball guy, as you can see in my title there. I've grown as a baseball guy. But again, like I got asked that question when I applied for, I had the interview process for a bunch of different jobs before I got this one. And every time I got asked that question, like, what was my end game or end goal as a baseball guy? And I gave this answer. I don't really know, like when I played, I obviously wanted to go to certain locations, but I took jobs in places where I probably wouldn't have if I had my choice. So
Yeah.
I'm taking it the same way as, my post-playing career is that, I just want to go where baseball takes me,
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt. That's really cool. But if you guys have any last minute questions, please drop them in the comments. I say this to everyone I interview, Greg, and it's because it means so much to me. And I know the other content creators that I have worked with, NFE being one of them from the Strike Zone. If you guys have not done so, please go to his channel and, show him some love. But for me, being able to interview guys like yourself or others that I have interviewed, it's such an honor and a privilege because we don't see what goes on behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Guys like yourself and others that we have interviewed get that chance. They get to see what goes on behind the scenes. And for us to be able to speak with you guys, it's cool because we get to see that other side of the fence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we get to see what actually goes on, and we get a better perspective from a player standpoint. And it gives us such good information and knowledge that it gives us a better understanding. And for me, that is such an honor and a privilege, and it is so cool for us. But before we let you go, we have one last question from Yankees 2, and he wants to know, who do you think gets the MVP, Judge or Soto?
I think the league likes Judge more. I think he's that straight-laced captain type, and I think Soto is I don't know. I think Judge gets it just because I think Judge gets so much more like white hot at times than Soto does. Like Soto might get a little infatuated sometimes with walking. And I think a lot of people have brought that up. Like, we don't need you to walk. We need you to hit. And I think that's why it's good that they work with each other because, I think Judge hits behind Soto, doesn't he?
He does. He hits third and Soto.
I think having Judge behind Soto is good because, Judge will make you pay if you walk Soto. But I don't know. I think they should get a speed guy on in front of Soto or something so that it makes him more aggressive. But I just see him taking a lot of borderline pitches or a lot of pitches that I think he could drive, whereas Judge hits balls and they go out by 50 feet.
Yeah.
So I just see Judge as being more impactful, but again, who knows, man? In that ballpark as a left-handed hitter,
yeah,
Soto could hit 80 home runs. I don't know.
Very true. Very true. But guys, this is going to wrap it up for us. Greg, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. We know that you're busy and you got things going on. And, thank you for coming on and, taking the time to speak with us and, give us that insight that is so knowledgeable and so great. So I can't thank everyone enough for who I've interviewed to come on and speak with me. And the guys in the chat, all of you guys are awesome. Thank you for your continued support. Please like and share this out with everyone you know. It means the world to me. And thank you all for subscribing and, staying with me and, showing the channel support. It means a lot. I can't thank you guys enough. Greg, this was an awesome, awesome time. I enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Greg, I hope you had fun doing this. This was a lot of fun.
Sure.
Anytime you want to come on, just let me know. Let Nathan know. We'll get it set up, and we'll get you back on. But, guys, until next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you guys all next time on the next show.